Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for taking time here today. My name is Bob Ritchie. I'm the Deputy Chief of the Bureau of Corporate Support. Part of my area of responsibility is our Employee Services Division, and within that, Human Resources. This recent spotlight on our HR practices has renewed each of the members of the executive in the importance of our HR processes and the impacts they have on our employees. Our goal is to ensure that every member of the CPS has a vibrant, safe, and healthy workplace and a fulfilling career. This is a heavy obligation that I do not take lightly. Those members, past and present, who have come forward, it's taken courage on their part, and it hasn't been easy, and I recognize that. In order to address concerns and to improve our practices, we need members to come forward. We need to establish and foster an environment of trust, of respect, of support. That's the only way that we're gonna become better. It's the only way that we're gonna understand the implications within our work environments. Without this, we won't be able to change the culture, change the organization, to have the full impact of change that we need to take on this organization. In this realm, we continually strive to improve. We strive for excellence. Are we there? Absolutely not. But we understand that we have a long way to go. We understand that we're making strides in the right direction. And you have our commitment collectively to improve the work environment for our employees. In 2013, a workplace review was conducted, providing employees a safe environment to come forward with their concerns and their suggestions to improve our HR practices. This was done in a means to bring forward themes and recommendations that we would be able to review and implement. Since 2013, the Employee Services Division, the HR section, and the service for that matter, has implemented almost every one of those recommendations. The themes in the reviews, as mentioned, were consistent with practices that we rolled out, including the Office of Inclusion, Development, and Employee Engagement, providing flexible work options or enhancing flexible work options for our employees, increasing civilian and sworn expertise in our human resource section. A full list of the recommendations as well as that report can be found on our website. Our HR practices are continually evolving, as is our commitment to best practices. We want to be a leader in not only the policing field, but across every field. We aim to have progressive and comprehensive programs and supports for our employees. To that end, we have a very robust wellness strategy that helps guide us. That's a framework for us to ensure that there's growth and innovation in the areas impacting our employees. We continue to revamp our assessment process, our promotional processes, to ensure that respect, diversity, and inclusion are in the forefront. This also leads to identifying leadership candidates that live and walk these values day in and day out. I also want to ensure you that we have weekly, if not daily, consultation with our city partners, City Human Resources, and City LR. We also have partnerships across the community, across Calgary and across the nation, with leading organizations in the field of gender, equity, and diversity. Some of those include the Catalyst Group, the Haskayne School of Business, the University of Calgary, the International Association of Chiefs. Training that comes through these partnerships and through these programs is offered sworn and civilian members across the organization that focuses on leadership development, focuses on gender equity, focuses on professional development and professionalism in policing. Now, it's not lost on me, or for that matter, anybody in our executive, the importance of having a safe environment for our employees to come forward. We recognize that there's still strides to take in this area, and there's a commitment on our behalf to improve that, to increase that. Some of the areas that employees presently can come forward are through our professional standards section, the Calgary Police Commission, union representatives, human resources, peer-to-peer discussions, peer-to-supervisor discussions, The City of Calgary Whistleblower Program is also a resource for us, the Alberta Human Rights Commission. And lastly, I'd like to talk a little bit about our Office of Inclusion, Development, and Employee Engagement. Within this office is our Respectful Workplace Office and a Respectful Workplace Advisor. This office has two mandates. The first mandate is outward looking, outreach, training, mentorship. The second is around the response and reaction to complaints across the service. This office receives respect complaints regardless of rank, regardless of position across the organization. The office, it's important to say the office is also comprised of sworn and civilian employees that have a strong background and expertise in this area. On that note, in a moment I'll be introducing Kathleen Fraser, our workplace advisor. But I think it's important to speak to this note. Kathleen has been in this office since January. She brings a wealth of knowledge to this role. Kathleen holds a master's degree in counseling psychology with experience in conflict resolution and coaching. Prior to coming to the CPS, she served as a Crown prosecutor and has legal experience in the human resources sector. On that note, I'd like to invite Kathleen to come up and say a few words.
Thanks, Deputy Chief Ritchie, and good afternoon to everyone here. I'm very pleased with the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about the Respectful Workplace program as it operates in the Calgary Police Service today. I've been in this role since January of 2016, and from that time until present date, we've had the opportunity to receive 22 workplace concerns, concerns that evolve around whether or not our respectful workplace policy has been breached. And those concerns come from both civilian members in our organization as well as sworn members. And they come from both male and female complainants and involve both male and female respondents. For the most part, the theme around those concerns that we've received this year are not gender specific. More often they involve workplace interactions or workplace conflict between supervisors and their subordinates. Oftentimes it's in that gray area between whether or not something is performance management or whether or not it's bullying, harassment, or something in between that. So it's within our mandate and our role to closely examine the circumstances that are brought to us by complainants, to give them an opportunity to be heard and to have their concern addressed, and also to seek out full information about what has happened in each occurrence so that we can provide a fair resolution for all of our employees. Our mandate is largely restorative and focused on proactive education, training, awareness, and prevention to try and ensure that these type of workplace problems can be resolved in a way where all of our employees can come to work and feel like they can bring their best selves to work, that they can contribute within their roles to the best of their abilities. On occasion, we also are asked to respond in a more reactive way when there are concerns that cannot either be appropriately dealt with in a training, coaching, mentoring type of environment, or where the complainant has tried to approach the resolution of those concerns in other non-punitive or discipline-related ways and hasn't had any success. Like I said, our mandate is around being proactive and being restorative, but we definitely are also a point of triage so that when someone brings their concerns to us and it seems most appropriately dealt with on a discipline or accountability perspective, we're able to make those references to either our professional standards section or our human resources section for appropriate consideration and resolution. Thank you.
I'll make a few words and then I'll turn it over and we'll open the floor to questions to anybody you want to talk to afterwards. But again, as I've stated through this process, that our commitment as an organization is to serve Calgarians as well as we can. And in that also respect our employees, all of them. I'm very proud of this service and the level of professionalism that's been demonstrated and their commitment to this organization and the pride we have in those who speak up about how good this organization can be for them and what a good career experience it can be. But the goal is not to land there. We know that all it takes is one person to speak up and say they've not shared that experience, they don't feel empowered to speak up, they don't have a way forward, to sort of upset our whole model. So this purpose, this sort of opportunity we have here today is to reflect that again, that my commitment is this, is that the responsibility for the culture of the organization is on me. And our way forward is what you've heard a little bit about here today and more to come. But we will continue to work through this. We commissioned a report earlier on, not in response to a crisis, but we commissioned that report proactively thinking that we better find out what's going on in our workplace so we can actually evolve us to the status we should be in before we do find ourselves in a crisis. And it was thoughtfully done then, and I'm still committed to what's in that report and the way forward. I think some of the we've been involved in the last week or so. Sometimes, although I believe we all are on the same path, we want to give rise to voices that don't have a voice. We just want to make sure now we're working towards that. We're doing the things we should do and finding those people that need to speak. So to that, I think I'll just want to introduce our chair of our commission, and then the mayor, and then we will sort of take questions from there.
Thank you, Chief. First, I'd like to thank Deputy Ritchie and Ms. Fraser for providing us great insight into the depth and range of the services offered by the Human Resources Department of the Calgary Police Service. I'm pleased that we can share them with the public. And as always, I can tell you that the CPS leadership is committed to putting the strongest possible programs in place. And we've seen this as a commission not only in the area of human resource, but right across the spectrum throughout operations in a number of different areas. From the commission's perspective, it is our priority to oversee the work and the great work that is being done to create an inclusive workspace. It is not something that we've observed just since 2013. Since my time on the commission, we've seen the building blocks for an inclusive workplace environment. We've seen items like the creation of the peer support program, many of the programs that Deputy Chief Ritchie had mentioned, the respectful workplace, the wellness, the tremendous commitment to protecting people through the mental health resources unit. I can tell you that the most valuable resource that the service has is its people, and we are reminded that over and over again by the accounting team. That is the number one expenditure that we have, and we need to keep that asset very sharp. And so the service is very committed to that. Anyone who's worked with Chief Chaffin will describe him as a thoughtful, multifaceted, open-minded thinker. I've had the privilege of working with him for a number of years, and I can tell you that he is a critical thinker, and that's what he values above all else. It is one thing that he demands from his team, and he demands from everyone else, is just critical thoughts, bring an open-minded view, and share all of the ideas. Let's look for new and innovative ways to doing things, and he has brought that to the board and continued that tradition that we've seen with many of our past chiefs. He is first to say, as you've heard today, that the CPS can and should do better when it is practicing to create a fair and inclusive and tolerant workplace. However, the Commission will continue to hold the Chief accountable for ensuring the CPS has proper policies and procedures in place. You've heard we will be meeting in November, and we will be receiving a robust report. We did receive one in June, and we continue, as we have had in the past, to receive the reports. The community has an opportunity to address the Commission 9 times a year in our public meetings, and so we are open to hearing any suggestions, comments, or concerns that citizens might have. Now I would like to turn it over to Mayor Nenshi, who would have a few comments for us.
Thanks very much, Chair Shikaze. First question you might be asking yourselves is, why is the mayor here? It's important in every democracy, and particularly in this one, that we have civilian oversight of the police. It's why we have a police commission made up of volunteer citizens. It's why it's incredibly important that the police be free from political interference at all times. Nonetheless, we politicians do have a role to play in sharing the expectations of the community. And that's really why I'm here today, to talk a little bit of what the community expects of and believes in its police service. We live in a world where in too many places, police services, police forces have lost the trust of the communities that they serve. We've seen that in places, other places in Canada. We've seen it in other places in the Western world. It's not something we want to see here, nor is it something we will see here. The Calgary Police Service is quite possibly one of the best, if not the best, police services in this country, which makes it one of the very best in the world. Our approach to community policing is leading, it's unparalleled, it serves the community in an extraordinary way, and as a result, our citizens are the safer for it. And I'm very, very proud of the women and of the men of the Calgary Police Service. That's why reports like the things that we have heard over the last week or so are so troubling. They're not consistent with the CPS that we know. Let me be clear. Every single employee must feel safe at work. Every single situation must be handled fairly. There's been an extraordinary temptation over the last week to take sides, to either say, this is a terrible work environment, it is completely non-inclusive, or everything is absolutely fine, move along, nothing to see here. Neither of those are particularly helpful. What we have to do is acknowledge what works, we have to acknowledge what doesn't work, and we have to strive to be better. That's how we operate the City of Calgary with our 20,000 colleagues. That's how I expect that the Calgary Police Service also operates. But I want to also be very clear that that's precisely why I am so supportive of Chief Chaffin and his team. The Chief is, as you know, a man of tremendous integrity. In fact, I know very well that one of the reasons he wanted to be Chief and continues to want to be Chief is precisely to be able to create a police service that reflects the community that it serves in a very thoughtful way. And everything you've heard today indicates that reports from years ago were taken seriously at the time and are taken seriously now. That work's been done, that work will continue to be done to improve the working environment of the Calgary Police Service for every single member, sworn and civilian. I'm equally confident in the Calgary Police Commission. The Commission provides that civilian oversight that is needed for public accountability, that is needed for an excellent police service. I know they're doing their job well. I know that they will continue to ask the Chief the hard questions he needs to be asked when he needs to be asked those hard questions. And in particular, I expect action in 3 areas. 1, a better system of reporting issues and managing them that encourages people to step forward and that enforces accountability for people's actions. 2, a focus on changing legislation and agreements that work against an inclusive workplace. For example, it is extremely difficult to be able to return to work part-time after maternity leave and still qualify for the same pension benefits. These are things that are fixable, that we haven't thought about much in the past, and we have to be able to fix. 3, and most important, a cultural change that values everyone's ability to contribute, that fosters a service that looks like the community that it serves. The work of ensuring the safety and security of every single citizen is never done. But neither is the work of improving the service that's responsible to do that. Every single workplace always needs to strive to be better. The City of Calgary is not perfect, no workplace in the city is perfect. But we have to acknowledge that and continue to be better. We need to continue to build a Calgary Police Service that not only serves Calgarians every minute of every day, making sure that every single one of us is safe in our community, but also a Calgary Police Service that's a great place to work every day for everyone, that it's a great place to have a career, it's a great place to be supported in every part of the challenging work that our members of the service do. You've heard today that the CPS is not perfect, but it is committed to getting better. On Friday, I will attend the Calgary Police Service recruit graduation, as I often do. The class on Friday, for the first time anyone can remember, probably the first time in CPS's history, has more women than men. And I want to look at those recruits, and I want to honor them for their choice. They've made a noble and a great choice to celebrate a career in public service. And I want every one of them, women and men, to know that they have the opportunity to have a great career, to be able to come to work every single day and do the best possible job they can do, to be rewarded and honored for the work that they do, to be encouraged to get better when they don't do a great job, that every single one of them will be able to have a great career. And I want them to know that I'm committed, that City Council is committed, and in particular, that the leadership of the Calgary Police Service and the Calgary Police Commission are committed to make sure they have the best career they can have. So with that, we'll take questions. Thank you.
You okay, we just go ahead?
Yep.
In the most polite, respectful way possible, there was nothing new that was said here today that we haven't heard the last week. What exactly is new, I guess? Like what?
Well, that's precisely the point. There's nothing new. We report on this as though it's a new thing. But the point being that these reports were dealt with, that work has been ongoing, that work has been happening, that the work is continuing, that in fact the Commission had a big report in June about, in detail, if you've read that report, about the progress that's been made towards every one of the recommendations in the 2013 report. And I think that's important for the public to understand, that, you know, there's been allegations that nothing's been done, that the service is not taking this seriously, and frankly, those allegations are wrong.
I don't think necessarily that we're saying that nothing's been done, but all of us are still seeing the same issues. You know, police members coming forward to us saying they're still being bullied. They're on stress leave because they can't come forward. The whistleblower program doesn't work. We're still seeing people being sexually harassed within the workplace. You know, 3 years even after you're saying things have been done, we're seeing, like the media is seeing nothing change in terms of we're still getting the same reports from your staff.
You're going to see, and it's a good question, because you're going to see obviously what is a very complex organization that's asked to do a lot of things. The way that which we are rank structured, the sort of authorities that we hold, all present interesting challenges for all of our employees, whether you're sworn or civilian. And so as we started to unpack this, we started to see, we had the same hypothesis that we were seeing today, that there's things going on that we're not aware of. And how do you get people to report in a power structure that's difficult to report under? And how do you create that sort of leadership confidence that you can engage your employees? I know very well through working through our National Ethics Committee, that one of the single biggest determiners of employee confidence is the relationship between the front line and senior management. And we're finding those divisions between what it's like to be in the front line and what senior people see the organization to be like. So we're working through all this time, you're working through how to change your leadership culture, how to understand first what the problems are so you're fixing the right things. We've taken lots of strides to repair the things you referred to, but sometimes you take the wrong strides and then you find out you've made mistakes and you go back and you try again. You find more consultancy, you find more subject matter experts to help refine you. So everything you're seeing Jamie, you're talking about a culture of policing that is decades and decades old, and we are redirecting the ship, and it does not happen overnight. So I'm very sensitive to the idea that even one employee feels the way that you said, someone's experiencing what they believe to be bullying. Even to talk to the organization and say, define bullying. What does it mean to be bullied? Is a pretty complex topic, but there's the things that we don't want to throw words at. We actually want to understand and take demonstrable, meaningful actions going forward. And so we are seeing that already in the organization. You're seeing a much more comfortable relationship between senior management and the front line. You're seeing a much more engaged workforce. I mean, there's work to be done, but these things are happening, and it's, as the mayor pointed out, what I was struggling with is just, I didn't want any characterization as if we just sort of put our feet up and said, well, it's going to happen. These are problems we work through every day, and every one of those allegations you talk about is serious to me as well. So.
A question, and let me just jump in on that if you don't mind, which is, you heard from Ms. Fraser today that she's had 22 reports this year, of which, from women and from men, of which one was related to sexual harassment or bullying. So the question we have to ask ourselves is there a problem with underreporting, or are the reports that she is getting accurately reflecting what's actually happening? In a pretty large workforce, I might add. Every single one of those allegations is serious, and every single one of them is taken seriously. But we have to encourage people, as I said in my first point, to continue to come forward and report these things. One of the big challenges I've had this week is we have a lot of people speaking on behalf of other people. And We need to make sure that we've got a system where people are comfortable in coming forth and speaking with their own voice. You know, I've seen many, many reports in the media this week, not to criticize, saying many reports are coming forward. And all we have is one or two people saying many reports will come forward. And really, those reports need to come forward through the processes that work. And if the processes are not encouraging those reports to come forward, then the processes have to be better.
How did you feel, Mayor, when you saw the stories about several Calgary Police Service officers, a story coming from a member of the commission and a member of your council, about them coming forward saying that there were problems, whether it was 15 or 18?
Well, again,
what did you think when you read those stories?
Well, again, the numbers keep changing every time the story is told, which makes it a little bit difficult to follow the thread. But that said, every single report is very serious. And I take diversity and inclusion in our community and in our workplace very, very seriously. That's why I'm here. But when I heard those allegations, the first thing I did was ask a whole bunch of questions. Have they been taken seriously? What processes do we have in place? How could those processes be improved? Can the City of Calgary assist in making those processes better? And I know that sounds very technocratic, but those are the questions we have to be able to ask, because ultimately it is not helpful to take people's lives and talk about their concerns in the media without a process in place to actually help them solve the problem. And, you know, I was a bit surprised to hear that, a particular member of the police commission suggested nothing had been done when there was actually a very detailed report in an open session of the police commission in June going through every point by point. And I haven't heard any discussion about that from that particular member of the commission.
Is there any follow-up with that?
Yeah.
Is there any follow-up with what's been going on between Diane and everything else, you know?
Politicians are allowed to do what they're allowed to do. Commission members are allowed to do what they're allowed to do. And ultimately, my job here is to make sure that we're doing the best possible job we can have for all members of our workforce. And so, you know, people have to ask themselves the question, is what I am doing ultimately helpful in making the change that I'm looking for?
So just, this might be directed to Howie and you, Mayor. It's my understanding that there is a bylaw in place that can revoke a commissioner's position for cause. I mean, the three organizations who are standing up here at some point in the last week have called out Diane Collier-Card for her actions and called them inappropriate, asked why she's been a commissioner for 10 years and hasn't brought this forward, like you said, City Council to CPC. So you obviously all have a problem with this. Let's call a spade, and what is going to be done? Are you going to take any action because you're all complaining about it?
Look, I'm not interested in shutting anybody up, whether they are a member of council, a citizen volunteer on a commission, or a member of the public, or a member of the service. Everyone has the right to speak, and everyone has got the right to speak out. All I'm suggesting is that, in my mind, when I speak out, I try to do so in a way that doesn't cause more harm than good.
Well, and Howie, what's your response on this?
Well, our code of conduct allows commissioners to speak out on their own as long as they stipulate that they're speaking on their own opinion. When we speak for the commission, our code of conduct requires that only the chair and the vice chairs, when delegated, speak on behalf of the commission. Our messaging yesterday was simply designed to clear up some confusion that might be out in the general citizenry about what the commission's speaking and what the one voice of the commission is. That was our intent, was to make that perfectly clear. So councillors and politicians have different responsibilities that really I can't comment on, except to say that they need to do what they're entitled to do.
Even if it means she's saying going to the Alberta Justice, like that's then in a sense saying that you guys aren't capable of doing your job.
Again, everybody is entitled to their opinion. That's what diversity is all about. Right now, and on boards of directors and across the spectrum, we're looking for diverse thought, diverse ideas on boards. And as the mayor stated, everybody's entitled to their opinion. We need to have more opportunities for people to express their opinions. What we do try to do is create structures, rules, and codes of conduct so that people can get their voice heard in a respectful manner and ensure that they're dealt with and the issues come to rise and they're debated openly and publicly. And we provide a forum for that public debate 9 times a year in a public session of the Calgary Police Commission.
But I guess perhaps the question is that isn't this going just beyond stating an opinion? Is this not more than that?
Were you guys aware that she was meeting with police officers in that capacity for months last spring? Was that brought to your attention until we reported on it, or?
It was brought to our attention, but I really can't comment on that. I mean, there's a number of issues, privacy concerns, and things that we hear about that makes it difficult for us to comment on.
And this question might be for the mayor. At what point were you guys made aware of this 2009 study that, and from my understanding, first of all, this study, they were asked to find people who had experienced bullying or harassment. So as the chief said, it isn't indicative of the 3,000 members in the Calgary Police Force. But when were you guys made aware of that one and the 2013 one?
Well, I think you're actually talking about the 2013 one in your
There's
question,
two.
but
I'm
I know, but the specific example you gave, I think, is related to the 13 one. Now, that said, remember that the commission operates independently of city council. It would actually be very, very, very wrong for city council to be engaging in operational issues of the police, because that's what leads to political interference in places we don't want to live. And so that is very, very, very wrong. I have read the report. And in fact, it's interesting to note that the second paragraph of the preface very specifically highlights that in that 2013 report, Ms. Prowse was only speaking with people who had negative experiences. She's very, very clear about that. I was a consultant for a long time. Let's just say I would not write a report speaking with people who only had one side of the story. I certainly would not make recommendations based on that.
So
That's
what
what
was
she
the
was asked to
purpose?
do.
Yeah, what was
So
the
what
purpose
was-
of having a kind of report like that that's completely useless then?
The genesis of the report was really to understand where are we right now. What we asked of the report was to determine where are our HR processes, our practices, and where are the risks and issues in the organization. So there's some opportunity then for the author to speak to other people in the organization, to speak to, and she did speak to people that weren't necessarily complainants. So that number of people you see in there is a blend of people that are both sort of the management side and people experience in HR, as well as those people who had concerns. So there's a blending there of people, but I think to the mayor's point, though, it's not necessarily highly reflective of the whole organization, particularly those people that are having concerns.
So when was it brought to the attention of the city, or at all, or was it?
So the report, as the report was authored and delivered, it was purposely constructed in a way to protect the interests of those who came forward. So as soon as it was done, it came to the executive of the police service, and we started to interpret the report and understand that report, but it was held as a privileged document, and very simply to make sure that people who had the courage to speak weren't going to be publicly vetted afterwards or not being shared within the organization, because some of their stories could tend to easily identify who we're talking about. So.
Chief, as far as the people, the 18 people that reported to one of the commissioners, what do you say to them? They obviously, for whatever reason, don't think this system works. So what do you say to them? Now, in the past you've said, my door is open, other people's doors are open. Can you do more to connect with those people, talk to those people, you, not anybody else, not offices of inclusion and all this other stuff, you, to deal with those people? Because that was a very big part of the story, as well as the reports, was these actual officers who have no faith in the system you rolled out, have concerns, are afraid to come forward to their supervisors, are afraid to come, think that the Office of Inclusion is useless, and it's up to you. You're the chief. What will you do beyond just saying my door's open if you want to come in? They're not going to do that. So what can you do to ensure that you get together with them? As the mayor indicated, everybody who has a concern should be treated respectfully and dealt with, and let's get this stuff dealt with. So how are you going to deal with those people?
Well, I mean, as you refer to the 18, again, what you're asking is to some extent a very, very difficult question to answer, because I'm not ever going to be in a position to want to discuss anyone's personal particular issues in this setting. Even though that they can express those back to us and we'll have to listen to them, there's an assumption here that we haven't engaged with those people, and there's something we haven't already done. I just don't want to do that. The story that you're professing is probably a better hypothetical. is I do want to make sure that my role as chief, this idea of being, having trusted, genuine leadership is what's sort of creating trust in the organization to bring these voices forward. Writing policy won't do it. You know, I do not agree with your characterization of office inclusion. That's not a farce. It is
I'm saying
but that's
they
wrong.
said that.
It's not. It is a meaningful, purposeful step to actually reach out to people, but part of that whole culture of trust and genuineness in the organization. But if people have not felt trust their whole career, they're not going to feel it overnight. So when I hear about people like this, I do put my voice out there, but it's not me alone. It's the whole command team. It's building the trust of my command team up to have them engage people in a unique way, in a way they've not done in the past, to make sure they're real people. They're out there understanding that this workplace is complex and people are stressed. And you know the sort of workplace we're dealing with right now and the kind of workload they're going through. It's difficult for everybody. It's difficult for and if you're having difficulties in the workload you're dealing with and the stresses you're feeling, it will often manifest itself in the way you behave inside the workplace. So we were trying to make sure that trust is the issue at play here, that we simply have to give rise to voices. And you will not do that by motherhood statements. You will not do that by grandiose policy statements. You have to demonstrate it in your actions, and that will take some time.
But are you saying, just so I'm clear, are you saying you have met with some of them, but you just can't tell us? Or are you,
No,
for privacy issues, or you haven't met with them? I mean, have you or haven't you met with them?
I have, honestly, I have no idea who they are in terms of their names. I just know we meet with a lot of employees and I talk to a lot of people and we hear from people about these issues. I can't assign any names to any of those people. I have no idea. That's part of the challenge, obviously, but still the same opportunity applies. We find ways to get them into the areas where they can find peer support, where they can find Kathleen support, where they can find whatever ways we can do to develop that trust and confidence to speak up. And they do speak up. People speak up, but it takes time, and not everybody feels empowered to do that.
But a lot of the people who do speak up end up completely ostracized. Like, we hear it pretty consistently. It's not just 18 people, we've all heard it from different sources.
You know what, again, it's a facet of that sort of feeling of ostracization is a facet of such a large, complex paramilitary background organization. That's something that's why we do all this, to try to break through those barriers. We hire very different people now than what we used to 25 or 30 years ago or 40 years ago. We hire people because of their self-awareness, because of their sense of value that they bring. We don't hire robots anymore. So when these people come, they have varying degrees of expectations, of value systems, of beliefs that we have to adjust to. And when we don't adjust well, when someone doesn't have a very good experience, then we have to deal with it. And again, I'll say, I just don't believe, Jamie, with 3,000 people in such a complex environment, that we'll always land it right with every person, but we will always get better. We'll always find a way.
I have another question for you. You
Sure.
mentioned earlier
One last
that
question. I got to pull the mayor, unfortunately.
you mentioned earlier that it would be inappropriate for city council to have been involved in those kinds of situations. That kind of begs the question, is it appropriate then for somebody who sits on city council to continue to sit on the CPC when these lines have now officially been blurred?
Well, you know, we still need to have oversight, and that's why I'm here, right? To really highlight the expectations of the community as expressed through City Council. And I'm going to reiterate them for you, because I want to be very, very clear that we are not in a position where the situation is perfect now. And I expect the police service to focus on these three things, and I expect the commission to provide oversight on these three things. And the first is better reporting and better managing of reports. So people have to feel comfortable in coming forward. They have to understand, and you know, the Office of Inclusion, and Ms. Fraser's only been there since January, so it's a bit much to say this is a farce.
It's not, I'm quoting
But no, this is my point though, right? But if they feel that way, you know, some people will always feel that way, but if they feel that way, we need to make sure that we are not building a system that's under-reporting. So number one, we got to have a reporting system that works, that is confidential, that allows people safety in coming forward so they don't feel ostracized in their work environment. And there are some challenges in a paramilitary style organization in doing that, but it's possible to do, and it'll be done. Number two is, as I said, there are some systemic things in how we manage human resources. We haven't talked much about that, though it's actually the majority of the report from 2013, which really is around if people return from maternity leave, how do we make sure that their career progression is not impaired? If they need accommodation in the hours that they work in a 24/7 shift environment, how do we make sure they can do that and still proceed in their career? This is not unique to the police service, to the public sector. I mean, law firms have this problem. Consulting firms have this problem. So how do you make sure that people can still have decent careers and good career progression, and fix some of the systemic things? And in our case, there's actually things in collective agreements and in legislation that make it very, very difficult to have flexible work environments. So that is, that's not the headline grabbing stuff. It's the majority of the stuff in the 2013 report. And so we've got to fix it. And number 3 is the stuff that the chief really talks about, which is, as we're hiring a new generation of people, as we're hiring more and more women into the sworn service, how do we affect a cultural shift that says, for example, you know what? It's never appropriate to email random people or to text random people and say, want to hook up after work, which is one of the allegations that we've heard. These are the sorts of things that need to change, and will continue to change as they've changed in workplaces everywhere. And those are the things that we expect as a community. We expect the police service to do. We expect the police commission to provide oversight on. And I'm very, very confident that we will continue to be better. And as I said, it needs to be an employer choice where people have the chance to have a great career. And I'm going to cut it there. Thank you all.
Any other questions for anyone else?
Just one for the chief. This is maybe an easy one, maybe hard. What can you say to those people who still feel that the current system is not something that they feel comfortable with, but you want to have them come forward? What can you say to them so that they feel that they won't be, that they won't be dealt with badly in any way, that they won't, their career won't be ruined, that all sorts of other things might happen? How can you assure them, or what can you say to get those people that are still reluctant, still afraid, to come forward?
Again, I would hope after being here for a year, people will understand my commitment to holding people to account and to running this organization in a certain way. I think I've had an interesting year around demonstrating that wasn't my goal, but I want at least people to rely on the fact that if I say we're going to do something, we'll do that thing. I think arguably at the end of the day, though, Rick, it is the ability to create and foster trust, and I can't order that on anybody. I think all we can do is one person at a time demonstrate it can do. I have one on my phone right now where someone's called up and said, look, I have a concern, and so good. So someone's come forward. That's one person, but that's one person more than yesterday, so I mean, I'm willing to accept that. So.
Same question back to both of you that I asked the mayor before he jetted, but do you guys think the lines have been blurred between the position of a city councillor, and we are talking about Diane Collier here, I'm not going to say a councillor or commissioner. Have the lines been blurred?
My only issue I've had through this whole process, and that's why we're here today, even to Jamie's question, is my concern has always been, has never been the fact that anybody speaks out or even speaks out against me. I mean, I quite accept that holding such an important office in the city comes with criticism, and you can never stifle criticism, even if it seems unfair. What I was challenged with a little bit is what was not presenting accurate information out, and that has a negative effect. Even though all of you here today, the councillor, the mayor, everybody has the same interest in heart. We want to make sure that people don't have to work in environments like this. But with misinformation creates divisiveness, and it creates a problem where, as you heard, the organizations start to rise up. That rising up is important to hear that people are very proud of the organization, but at the same time it's suppressing voices. And that's what I was concerned about more than anything. I just want to make sure we had accurate information out. I'm more than happy, as I have been challenged many times by the councillor and other people about, they like or dislike something I'm doing. I'm okay with that. I just didn't want it to be sort of a random characterization of the organization that wasn't actually helping the cause I think we're all trying to work
towards. Has she responded to any of this? I mean, I know she's not returning my calls, or mine.
We'll have an opportunity in commission coming up. We have our subcommittees and commission. We'll have a chance to chat. I mean, this, I know this doesn't help you or anybody here, but in the media is not the place to have these discussions, these full and frank discussions. But I fully support what the mayor said. There simply is no legitimacy in policing if politicians and the public cannot speak out against it. There's no way we can do it. So I'm okay with it. I'm just not okay with, sort of the mischaracterization of the issues.
And Howie, what's your perspective, or the commission's perspective?
Excuse me. The commission's perspective would be these are important issues to raise. I mean, they need to be raised, and we were aware of them. And what the commission is concerned about, or just wanted to make sure, is that we have the proper forum for debate, and we have a respectful discussion that is inclusive of all of the parties concerned. So we did hear from a constituent of people who feel their voices aren't heard and they don't have a place to bring their grievances forward. And we hear voices from people, as the mayor had said, who feel quite comfortable with their environment. As a commission, we need to respect and understand all of those voices that are brought forward and make sure that, and hold the service to account to make sure that they continue with the ones who like the way things are going and that they continue to work to improve in the areas where they need improvement.
So will this be an
It's-
in-camera discussion then?
In terms of in-camera discussions, we will discuss our process and our procedures and for how we should debate and how we should ensure that we're getting the citizens of Calgary the best possible result. Yes.
So last week in commission, the chief proposed another type of whistleblower third-party program that people can come forward to. Where are you guys with that? Because we asked this question in commission. It's been 3 years since that report. We still don't have that program. We know the whistleblower program has its issues. So what is the plan? Like, you guys just keep repeating the same thing to us, but what is the plan going forward?
You're right on the whistleblower program is, because we're a mix of, we have a very large mix of civilian employees who are connected to the city through their unions and through the management structure. The whistleblower program works very well for them. The struggle with the whistleblower program for sworn members is it does not allow for us to investigate afterwards. So the only way really to complain about a holder of a public office like policing is through the Act and through the PSS process. So it always creates an anonymous complaint that says, here, someone did something very bad, but we leave us nowhere to go with it because we don't have the information we need. So there's some structure there. We are going to look at some, as I'm going to report to the commission on some consultancy to say, let's make sure our practices are the best practices. Our policies are essentially meeting the needs and they're contemporary with expectations of modern community. And that's one of our next processes going forward, is make sure that we have someone else put a set of eyes on us that says, are you doing well? Are you really doing, or are there other things you could be doing? Because I would hope, Jamie, that next year we're still talking about this. This is still something you're asking me questions on. We're showing you progress. There's not an end state in mind here. This is something we simply have to keep moving forward. So if there's another way that we can get people to come forward, and as you saw on that list, there's many different ways, and that's only the more obvious ways. If someone had to go to a counselor to come forward and find the supports they needed, I would more than support. Find some way to come forward. But every process you set up introduces the idea of further bureaucracy and some concerns for an employee. One of the things we talked about for Kathy's office, for instance, is finding some more independence for them so they can strip themselves of some of the perceptions of bureaucracy. And so we're going to look at all these improvements going forward, report to the commission. Most of those reports will be in open, so we'll be able to talk to you about it as we're talking to the commission about it, so we can be, our intention was always to be open about this. And like you've experienced, these are difficult conversations.
Chief, just really quickly, I know you've kind of talked about this before, but just with all these questions coming in and the fact that, I know you don't want to throw anybody on the bus here, but all of this went on the 2013 report when you were in chief. I know you were in higher levels, and I know you talked about this, but with all this going on, all of these questions, has the frustration increased for you? Do you feel that any of this is not unwarranted, but it's a lot when you weren't even the chief?
No, I've been here for 30 years. I've been a senior officer for a large part of that career, and I accept full responsibility for this culture of this organization. I can't pretend I wasn't here. I had the role over human resources during that time, so these are all things I was aware of. I was pretty passionate about. These are things that we have worked through continuously for several years now, and there's not a hope I would ever put any sort of crosshairs on anybody but me on this. This is our responsibility, and I took this job knowing full well that this is something I will own, and that's why we're here today. So.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.